let's start making the base for our lasagna. So I'm going to turn on my skillet here, and we're just going to put a little bit of olive oil in here just so that our meat doesn't quite stick. And then I've got about 1.5 pounds of Italian sausage that we're going to cook and break up and add in there, as well as some ground beef. We're going to use part of this ground beef for our cabbage rolls, but part of it's going to go into our spaghetti, or not our spaghetti, our lasagna base. So I'm just going to put about 1 pound or so in here. And then we're going to smash it all up together and cook it. And this is going to be the meaty base for our lasagna, which will be delicious. Lasagna is one of my favorite things that I always make for my parents when I go out of town. They kind of always know that, oh, she's going to make the lasagna. And I make a couple like smaller ones so they can keep them in the freezer and eat, especially like whenever my kids have like soccer tournaments away from home and whatnot. Okay, we're going to start to let those cook up. I'm going to give my rice a little stir here. It's boiling. So I'm going to just give it a stir up, and then we're going to turn it down nice and low, and we're going to let it simmer on low with the lid on until it's nice and fluffy. And this will be added to our other ground beef for our cabbage rolls. There we go. Let's see if I can get a big ladle here for our soup. I'm going to push some of this chicken down under. There we go. Okay, while our hamburger, our ground beef, and our Italian sausage is cooking up, we are going to make the ricotta base for our lasagna. So let me grab this. I've got my ricotta, Parmesan cheese, pesto, and a little bit of spinach.
Good question. Do you always cook for your parents?
I do. I cook all of their meals. I actually started doing it, I want to say like almost 10 years ago. I started doing it. My parents they're academics and they work very busy jobs. And so it was just a way that I could help them out because I really enjoy cooking. And it used to be I always cooked Sunday dinner, and I would make a whole bunch of food on Sunday and let them have all the leftovers. But then I just slowly started just making bigger portions and, giving them the food, and I'm making all of it. And they live like 3 miles away. So it's nice. We're going to put in 1 big tub of ricotta, which is 32 ounces. It's kind of like the cranberry sauce jello mold. And then I'm going to take some spinach here, and we're going to chop it up because we're going to add it to our ricotta. Now, when I make lasagna for my kids and my husband, I do not add all of the vegetables that I add when I make it for my mom and my stepdad, or for me. We have very different flavors. I love mine chock full of veggies, and they like theirs the standard meat lasagna, which I do have my standard meat lasagna one on like a video on the link on our profile page as well. So you can check it out. It's very similar, just minus any vegetable.
You have a question. How many people are you cooking for?
So this is actually for my parents for when we're gone on our trip. So it's just the 2 of them, although I will say my stepdad probably eats for like 2 people. But it's going to be for them to have while we're gone on our trip for 2 weeks. So part of it will be for them to eat right away, and part of it will be for them to put in the freezer to heat up later. Okay, let's give this a good stir. And break up our little sausage into smaller bits so you don't have big chunks of it. And once it's kind of cooked up, we're going to season it up with some more spices as well. And turn it down a smidge. There we go. Okay, turn down. Our soup is boiling nice, our broth. I'm gonna give a couple more chops of this spinach, mainly because you don't want to have any super big leaves when you're going in there. You want it to kind of um, break up easily.
You have a question. Where are you going on your trip?
We're gonna go to the Indiana Sand Dunes National Park, Ottawa National Forest, Chickamauga and Nicollet National Forest, Voyageurs National Park, and Chippewa National Forest. So we've got a lot of things, and then we'll end at my sister's lake house in Minnesota. So we're gonna be all over. Lots of camping, lots of hiking. My kids are excited to do the 3 dune challenge, which hopefully it won't be too hot when we do it. So I've got my spinach in here, which is about like 2 cups chopped up. I'm gonna add in, this is about a cup of Parmesan. I'm gonna add a little bit more. I have these bags, I just wanna get rid of them before we leave. So that's about a cup and a half, or Parmesan cheese. And then we're gonna add in a big scoop of pesto. And this pesto is what makes the ricotta base of my lasagna so delicious. It takes it from just being like a really creamy, cheesy part to having a lot of flavor. So we're gonna put in a good 2 scoops of pesto, and that's just gonna give it wonderful flavor. And now I'm just gonna mix all of this up. And this again is gonna be the ricotta base for my ravioli. The spinach will, when you cook it, will shrink down and it will turn much finer in there, so you won't notice it as much. You can also, a lot of times I'll add in a whole big batch of fresh basil leaves in here, but I didn't have any. And again, I wanted to just really use up what I had in my refrigerators. This will have so much delicious flavor, and it really gives you a more herby lasagna. Okay, get this nice and mixed up. Okay, we'll set that to the side. Let's give this a little bit of a go through and trying to chop this up again. Trying to just break up some of these sausage balls. I can buy bulk Italian sausage at Costco, but they always come in the links, so I always delink them and use them this way, which kind of gives you little sausage balls, but they'll still be delicious. Give this a nice little stir. And now I'm going to chop up a few mushrooms to add in there, because I do love to add a couple mushrooms in my my lasagna. I think it just adds a very nice touch to it. I think it just makes it beyond just noodles, meat, and cheese. Gives you more of I've got a veggie in here. Again, when I make it for my husband and my kids, it is only with meat and cheeses, and of course the marinara sauce. But when I make it for my parents, they're more adventurous. They like it when I stock it full of veggies. And sometimes I'll make a zucchini lasagna, which is good, but the lasagna noodles, you just really need that. The zucchini noodles just don't quite cut it. Okay, we'll get a couple. I'm cutting them nice and thin because I want them to not just be super big in our lasagna, but really just have little bits of mushroom chunks. So I've got them sliced up, and then I'm just going to do a couple random chops over them just so I don't have any super big pieces. Help them kind of disappear. But if you're like me, I just love mushrooms. Okay, let's give this a nice stir. And then I'm going to go grab my Italian seasoning. I didn't grab it, but I'm going to go grab it so I can put some Italian seasoning in here. And this is going to help. If I just were doing Italian sausage, you wouldn't need to do this. But with the ground beef, you really want to season it up as well, because you want a lot of flavor to come through. Otherwise, the cheese can be a bit too much. So we're going to add about a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. And then we're going to add in some garlic salt. A good shake over, about a teaspoon and a half. You don't need to add a whole bunch because remember, Italian sausage is already seasoned. So you're only kind of really putting it in there to season up the ground beef. Okay.
You have a question? How many servings will this lasagna be?
This, I'm thinking, is going to make 4 little loaf pans of it. I've got little loaf pans right there, and this should make about 4. If I'm doing my great big sheet of lasagna, this makes a big one of it. So it can make, I'm going to stretch it to be in between the 4s, and that should be a good amount for each one. That way they can heat it up as they go. Or a lot of times they'll give it away to one of the loaves to one of our family friends. They love my lasagna as well. So they might give one of them to them.
Yeah, what do you cook when you go camping?
I do. So I'm going to be doing a lot of campfire cooking while we're there. I have a whole little setup. I have little grills that go over the fire. And then I have my own little camp stove. And I have just like a little rotation of meals that I do, which are delicious. So the kids are excited. I went grocery shopping for that today. So got a good plan of what we're going to be making. And what I do is I'll shop for about 4 days. We'll keep everything in a cooler with ice. And then I stop kind of halfway through our trip. And then I shop for the next 4 days because you can't take so much stuff with you because you only have so much space left in your car. This year, we bought a little hitch to kind of go on the back of our thing with a little cargo thing. And we are going to be and have so much more room. Last year, we brought the dogs on, and there was all 7 of us, and we were packed in like sardines. Like there was no wiggle room whatsoever. There was no leg room for anyone. I mean, I think I, as the driver, had great room. I was actually being the driver was the best part because you had the most room and you can control the music. But it was last year was tricky. So this year will be much nicer and we'll have a lot more room. Okay, we got our mushrooms in there. We're going to let those kind of saute up and cook for just a second. And we've got this base. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my marinara since these mushrooms are nice and starting to get soft. And we're going to let that kind of simmer and kind of infuse in the flavor. So I'm using 1 bottle of the Rayo's vodka sauce and 1 of the marinara. I love the kind of creaminess that the vodka sauce gives for my lasagna. And so we're going to do half and half. I feel like it just blends so well with the cheeses and everything. But I like to do half and half because I think if you do full vodka, it's a little too strong. Set these guys right over here. We're going to give this a nice stir. And this, you don't want it to be a super runny sauce. You want it to be a thick and meaty kind of chunky sauce. Because don't add a little bit of water to your jar to get any more. You want it to be thicker so that your lasagna doesn't get soggy. We're going to mix this all the way up. And then we're just going to let it simmer for a little bit. I'm going to turn mine down to about a 4. Create. Let me grab my cheeses and my lasagna sheets to make up our lasagna. The best thing that I have found that has made lasagna making so much better, and it's better than the no boil sheets, fresh lasagna sheets. You can get them in the fresh pasta aisle. You get about 6 for a packet. Rana makes them. Delicious. These are a game changer when it comes to making lasagna, especially fresh. Like they leave you with tender. You know how sometimes those no boil lasagna sheets can get really crunchy and dried out because they just don't absorb enough liquid. These do not. These are the best. So I'm just going to take all of these individual wrap ones. And normally, if you do them in a bigger pan, you don't need to cut them, but I'm going to cut each one in this whole thing lengthwise. I'm actually think I'm going to cut them. Yeah, we'll cut them this way.
You got a comment that someone likes the cutting boards
Oh,
from your store.
well, thank you. I will say they are great cutting boards. I have them at my parents' house in their outdoor kitchen, and they're great ones. They try to copy the ones that I've had forever. So we're going to put a sheet of lasagna down in each of my little loaf pans. And now let me grab a ladle. We're going to ladle our meat sauce over. And I start with our meat sauce because I like the juices to soak up into our noodles and really season them. So we're just going to ladle it over. And depending on how far this gets, we might make another one or we might have a perfect amount. So really a good layer on. I got a little bit more on this one and a little bit more on my back one. Try to make it as even as possible. So we've got our nice little meaty layer. Now we are going to add in some mozzarella cheese. And we're going to do just a thin layer because our next layer is going to be our ricotta and Parmesan cheese layer. But I like to add just a thin layer here because I think it just holds everything together nicely. But it doesn't have to be super thick, a thin one. Our top one will, of course, be a nice thick crust layer, but this one, we're going to keep it nice and thin. We're going to add our next one. And so these make, I will say this is probably a perfect two-person serving, like a good two-person serving, each one of these tins. Now we're going to add our ricotta base. We're going to kind of spread it out. Don't make this too thick. Now the spinach will shrink down, but you don't want your ricotta base to be so thick that you're going to have a soupy lasagna. So just a nice kind of, I do about a scoop. It's probably, when I scoop it up, I'll kind of guesstimate how much that is. This is about a third cup and between for this little one, because if you overdo your ricotta, your lasagna will be soupy. So you want to have thin layers and lots of noodles to make sure that your lasagna holds together.
You have a question? Is this video going to be posted?
Yes, we will post it. My husband's actually going to break it up into individual ones. So you'll have like the lasagna, how to make the lasagna, how to make the soup, how to make each individual one. So that will happen sometime during our vacation when he gets a chance to edit it. Now we're going to add our next noodle on top. I'm going to press that down. And then we're going to go back and kind of do the sauce. There we go. So again, a good ladle full of sauce over the top.
You have a question? Can you freeze them? And if you can, do you do it before you bake them?
You can freeze them, and you can actually bake them and freeze them or leave them fresh and freeze them. I will say leaving them unbaked, you want to make sure, they will actually, I think, be a little bit better reheating because that top crust won't get overcooked. But if you just want to unthaw and then just reheat in the microwave, then cook them first. But yes, you can definitely leave them unbaked and freeze them down. They'll actually be great. You just make sure you let them completely unthaw before you pop them in the oven so that they cook all the way through. But this recipe is great for freezing. That's why I said these are great little meal preps for it, especially if you're a smaller family. I'm a big family, so when we make lasagna, we eat it all. But I understand, like most families, if you're just two or yourself or whatnot, making lasagna like this, but a big batch of it and then popping it in the freezer is just great.
Okay. And what did you put with the ricotta?
The ricotta, I put Parmesan cheese, pesto and chopped up spinach in mine. And now, if you like yours with no veggies, just omit that. But the pesto, I'm going to tell you, is going to give your ricotta such a great flavor. It really makes it just kind of gets rid of that overly cheesy, like creamy cheesiness that thing's on there, and gives you just a nice little plus of flavor.
We're getting a lot of comments about the noodles. Are they fresh noodles? Where do you get them?
Yes. So these are fresh noodles. They're Rana. I get them in the refrigerated section next to, where you can buy the refrigerated tortellini and raviolis. They sell these right there next to them. It's just like on the side. Best thing ever. I bought them on a whim like 2 years ago, and they are a game changer because you don't have to boil them. They are not crunchy. They are like just fresh pasta noodles that are wonderful. A lot of times I used to make my own pasta noodles, but these are just as good, and the fraction of the work. A lot of times I'll do them I have a pan that's exactly like one size of this noodle, and that's great. They cut really easy. And this is like my little hack. If you buy them and you have leftovers, you can chop them up, and they make great noodles for like chicken noodle soup. They work really well. They're very like silky soft. So you can reuse them and use them in other ways. Oh, before we put that top layer on, let's add a layer of mozzarella cheese. Again, not a super thick one, but a nice little sprinkle. And this just adds a little extra. There we go. And now we'll go back and we're going to add our next noodle. And I always like to, when I put them down, I give them a little press just to make sure, they get that soaked up, that lovely flavors. And now we're going to do our ricotta base. Again, just about 1 scoop, a third cup kind of works well. And then just spread it all the way out. You want it to be thin, like as thin as you can get it, where you have a covering. Like think about when you're frosting, a cake, nice and thin on that top layer. You don't want it super thick.
Yep, a couple of requests. Where can they find the recipe?
We will be uploading this video on the link of our page. So we'll be uploading just like a plain lasagna video for it. So you'll be able to watch that again and cook along with me there. That's probably the best way that I'll can get it out to you. I don't have a recipe card for this one. But it is super simple. It's not a very hard one to do. So I feel like you guys, could watch it and easily make this along with me at home again. There we go. Especially because once you have your bases made, it's just assembly. Okay, we've got our nice little ricotta bases here. Now we're going to put our noodles down. And also another thing about when you do lasagna, you're going to want to do them in a high pan. So these little loaf pans are great because they're really high, because the more layers of noodles you can get, the better. Okay, let's add our meat sauce. Here we go. We're kind of winding down. I think we're going to have enough to make 4 lasagnas perfectly.
You have a question. Does the sauce have to be cold before assembly with fresh noodles?
Nope. This sauce is nice and hot. You can do cold sauce or hot, either one. With it being hot, it'll probably bake up a little bit faster. So I make my sauce right at the same time. So yes, you don't have to have it cold, because you just really are spooning it in, so you're not touching it so much. So you don't have to worry about burning yourself. Okay, let's get the last of this up. I'm going to spread this out. I want to make sure I can get as much. Look at this. It's going to go perfectly over these 4. Let me put my ladle down. And I'm just really getting all of it on here because I'm not one to have anything go to waste. There we go. I'll actually slide that right there. I'm going to reuse that for one of our next dishes. Okay. So just spread the lovely sauce all the way around.
You got a question. What's the brand of the pasta sheets?
Rana. So Rana. Delicious. Their pesto is also really great. I'm using Kirkland's, but it tastes very similar to their pesto, and I really like it. It has a nice kind of Parmesan and basil flavor versus having like a nuttier flavor, which you can get, and it doesn't taste as chemically as some of the ones you can get out there. So I do like their pesto as well. Okay, we're gonna add in a nice thin layer of mozzarella. We will do a nice thick layer at the very end on our top, you know, to have that really rich cheese crust. But I like to do the little ones in between. Okay. And now we're going to press our last noodle on. Okay. And then we've got a little bit of ricotta. And just try to scoop it out between all of these. So it looks like we're going to have 3 layers of meat and 3 layers of ricotta on our lasagna, which is pretty awesome. We'll get all of that. And that was all from just one big kind of tub of ricotta. And get full fat ricotta. The low fat ricotta just is more watery and it makes a soupier lasagna, so it's just not as nice. And I will say lasagna is not a diet food. So this is one of those comfort meals. We're going to add our spread it nice and thin.
One of 4 of them.
Yes. Yeah, I got to make my parents comfort food. You know, they're going to be so sad that I'm gone for 2 weeks. Although my mom will be joining us at my sister's lake house halfway through. Okay, we are almost done. Let me open up my last sheet of lasagna. We're going to steal out 2 sheets to put our top one in, because I always like to end with a top noodle that has nothing on it other than cheese. So we'll cut these guys in half. And now we're going to give it a thick coating of cheese. I'm going to break this up. And that's going to give you that beautiful cheese pull with that thick crust there. It's just so what you think of when you think of lasagna. So you want to cover it up so you don't see any of the sauce or anything down below. Just kind of pat it in. And I will say with lasagna, like I said, a nice tall pan works well. They actually even make lasagna pans out there. My mom has a lasagna pan. And it is like the most ridiculous looking pan because it's like that high. Break up. Use the rest of this one. And then I've got some more mozzarella. There we go. Coat that in there. So we got these 2 covered up. So most of your cheese for your mozzarella is going on the top. You'll have, you know, a little bit between each layer, but it's primarily going to be on top. There we go. I've got one more. Looks like I have the perfect amount.
Yeah, but do you always cook for your parents or only on special occasions?
I always cook for my parents. I can't remember the last time my mom actually cooked for herself. She did make my kids Swedish pancakes a couple days ago, so I guess she did make that. But I do cook for all of her meals. A lot of times I just make big batches from what I'm cooking because we have a large family. If cook for 9 is the same as cooking for 7, it's really not that much of a difference. Okay, I'm just going to clean up a little bit of this cheese underneath so it's not too much of a thing. And then these just go into the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes. They don't take very long to cook, which is it's lovely. So we're going to go pop these in. You could do, you could also just cover them up and not bake them, and then just pop them in the freezer and then bake them up, or make ahead and pop them in later in the week. They'll last a couple of days without going bad, and they'll last in the freezer forever. Okay, just realized I need to do a little shift. So here are our lovely root vegetables still roasting up. Put them right there. And I will say they do take a lot longer to cook because they're the heartier root vegetables. So we're going to keep them in there while our lasagnas cook. And then I'm just going to set my timer for 30 minutes. So we've got our lovely, I'm going to actually bring it around my island right here so I don't get burned. But we have it right here. I like to leave them like this because my parents reheat them in the oven. So I don't do a full bubbly bake. That way they can reheat it in the oven for about 10 minutes at 350 and you'll get the final bubble on your cheese. But if I was eating it tonight, I would cook it for another 10 minutes. We have our gorgeous lasagna. We made 4 middle dishes. We have a meat sauce in there, and then we made our ricotta with pesto and spinach in it. So delicious.